Hey guys, today we're going to learn the basics of piping. So right here you're going to see a little worksheet that you can download below. It is in a page protector so that it can be used over and over again. And you can just wipe it down and try again if your lines aren't satisfactory and you want to keep practicing. Okay, so we're going to gather everything we need. So we have this paper. We're going to grab our icing bag that has not been opened yet. Some paper towels or napkins. A boo-boo stick, toothpick, or scribe tool of your choosing. This one is from Sweet Sugar Bell, and I love it. It is my favorite tool. But you can use a toothpick if you do not have one. This is a 3-pack I got on Etsy. You just search cookie decorating boo-boo stick. And then you'll also need a pair of scissors. And this is a table cover. It's a Wilton disposable counter cover. And I think I got these at Walmart, and they're very handy because you can just take the cover off and not have to worry about cleaning up anything. This is going to be our icing bag cutting guide for now. We'll take our bag and with the seam facing up, we're going to flatten it to a nice point. And then you'll lay it against your guide. And you can see here, I'm trying to line up the tip of my bag with the very tip of the guide. And then you're just going to snip the very end. You can always snip a little bit more off, but if you cut the bag too much, then your icing's going to come out too fast. So start very, very small and just barely snip off the end until you have the correct flow that you're comfortable with working with. And I'm just going to snip the very tip of my bag off. Just like that. And then I'm going to twist the bag in my hand and push the icing towards the cut tip. Just like this. And you'll find your most comfortable way of holding it. It just takes a little bit of practice, and it goes, if you keep enough pressure, then the icing will come out itself, and that's kind of what you want. So to make a line, what we're going to do is we're going to touch down at the start of our line, hover over the line, and then touch back down. So try that again. And you want to keep the tip of your icing bag clean. So we'll try this one more time. We're going to touch down, hover over, and then touch back down to end our line. Now you don't want to scrape. That does not work. And you might think it's easier than to hover, but it's not. You do not want to scrape your bag across your cookie. You want to hover over, and that also allows you to be able to see better where you're laying your icing down. So you can wipe that off if you want to and keep practicing your lines. Let's go ahead and practice our lines one more time while we're here and we have a clean sheet. So we're going to touch down, hover, touch down, hover, touch down, hover, touch Okay, so moving on to our square, it's exactly obviously like doing lines, but we're going to stop at each corner and touch down so we can make a crisp, clear corner. So we'll touch down, hover over, touch down, hover over, touch down, hover over, touch down, hover over, touch down. Alright, and clean off your icing bag if you need to. And you can see here that there's a little gap. That's just where there was an air bubble in the bag. And you can just go right back over that with the bag. That's no big deal. Also, sometimes royal icing will separate in the bag, and that's totally fine. So when you get your bag, some parts might feel more watery or more solid, and that's okay. All you have to do is grab the tip of your bag and then push it back in towards the back, and you can wiggle it around like this and give it a little massage, and it will mix your icing back up to consistency, and it'll be nice and solid color. Sometimes it looks a little marbly. Okay, so moving on to our squiggles, and see, this is a really important reason why we hover over, so we can see where we're going. And you can practice those a few times and get used to the hovering and the moving of it all. And then for circles, those just really have to be practiced. But you can just hover over and try to lay your icing right on that black line. And then touch down at the end. Okay, moving on to dots. Instead of drawing a circle and then filling it in, what we want to do is hold our icing bag straight over our cookie and push down. And just squeeze out until your dot is as big as you would like. And then you can kind of use the end of your icing bag to move the icing around. And then for our teardrop shapes, all we're doing is a dot and a flick. So a dot and a flick, dot, flick, dot, flick, and then the other way, dot, flick, dot, flick, dot, flick. Now the hearts are just two raindrops side by side. So drop, flick, and then drop, flick. Drop, flick, drop, flick. One more time, drop, flick, drop, flick. Now you can obviously outline the heart and fill it in. That's totally your choice. But I feel like it loses some of its dimension. Kind of looks like a blob if you're not careful. Now with our bows, what we're practicing now is called quilting, which means we're letting two areas of icing crust before we move on to something touching it. So it adds dimension. It's not just one blob. So what we're going to do is fill in our spots 1 and 2, and then we'll let those crust and come back and add the middle of the bow. So it will look like 3 separate pieces instead of one bow shape. So we'll let that crust for a good 5 or so minutes. So while that's crusting, we can work on some squiggles. Just some fun practice. Alright, we're gonna let that bow crust a little bit longer before we put the middle in. So while we're waiting for that to crust a little bit longer, we'll talk about some other things. So a lot of times, well, I guess every time when we're decorating cookies and we're putting down bags and picking up bags, the end of our icing will start to come out of the bag, and we want to keep that clean. So you always want to keep some paper towels around so that you can clean your bag off before every time you use it on a cookie. If you don't, then it comes out not smooth and the end is dry, so it's not going to dry completely flat. It's going to be bumpy, and we don't want that. While we're waiting, I'll show you some of my favorite tools. So as I said, this is my boo-boo stick. The pointy edge is for popping air bubbles, moving icing. The back side is for completely scraping off cookies if you need to start over. These are Food Doodle markers. I absolutely love them. They come in a ton of colors. And I ordered them on Amazon. They're a really great tool. Also have some paintbrushes. I like really fine tip paintbrushes. This one is from Sweet Sticks, and it came with this edible metallic palette, which is really awesome. You just add water and all these colors become like paint, and you can use them for details. I love that. Okay, so this should be crusted enough. Now, the whole thing is not dry, and you can definitely smush it very easily with your finger, but the point is to have it not be wet on the outside. And then you can go ahead and add your middle to your bow, and it's going to be its own separate thing. As you can see, there's dimension between the bow and the middle, and that's what we want. So, we have practiced our bag handling and line tracing, and you did a great job, so now let's move on to some cookie decorating.